doing, Steve?
I love it. I love it when I get that sigh and I don't get that upbeat hello. How you doing? So Mike, what's going on with you this morning? I feel you're a
And
little
you're frozen
off
already.
color.
My
I'm
internet
frozen.
is my internet acting up?
I hear you. I see you.
Yeah, you're back. You're back.
Yeah, yeah, you're good.
You're
You're
back.
good. You're
Okay.
good.
Um, yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm having post-vacation blues.
Oh,
I
that's
took a couple days of back to reality, and I thought I was in this really good place. Coming off the beach, I had done a lot of deep thinking, a lot of contemplation about how I'm going to be, you know, more enthusiastic and really helpful. What I can do to control things and kind of block out the things I can't control and help my community the best I can. And I had all these great, wonderful, positive thoughts on the beach last week. And when I got back to the office Monday, you know, boom, it was like back to what had to be done, normal things, other, disruptions. I think that's kind of the nature of the world we live in, though, isn't it? Like we have these ideas, the best set plans, the best laid plans are then disrupted by, other things and other people's priorities. So I'm
absolutely.
trying to keep positive and I'm trying to not bring you down this morning, but that's where I am this morning. I woke up and kind of like, and I should be excited. Today's live stream day, Workplace
Yep.
Innovator
Sure
Interactive
is.
Live.
Yep.
So
No, man,
anyway,
you need to get that energy up, man. And who knows? Maybe
yeah,
through this
tell me how you're
conversation,
doing.
maybe through this
Give me some, give
conversation,
me some.
we'll get there. And I apologize. You're telling me of all this pain and anxiety you're going through, and my humor's kicking in because I love it because I just love seeing people in pain and anxious.
What is that about
I have
you? There's
no
something
idea.
strange.
It's gotta be growing up in Belfast, man, and just enjoying other people in misery. Misery loves misery, right? Isn't that what they say?
I guess so.
So there
Well,
we
I'm
go.
glad I could help you
But
today. I'm glad I could put a smile on your face.
you always put a smile on my face, Mike, every morning. But it's kind of interesting where you went with that in a sense of vacation. We have these grand plans. Our brains working, thinking, really like beyond what we typically do. But I think because we give ourselves time. I think because we let the brain relax and our subconscious then has the ability to sort of, allow those synapses to actually connect with each other, to find correlations, to come up with the new ideas, stimulate energy, and so on and so forth. I find myself Saturday mornings are when I feel that because it's the furthest I am away from actually having to do work again, and therefore I
Hmm.
find myself I'm more creative in that environment, which I find kind of
Yeah.
interesting as well. But it is also a nice segue into some of the things we're going to talk about this morning. So we've got four articles that we've shared with each other. We're going to touch on some of those, and
Yeah.
again, similar to yesterday, Mike. It's kind of interesting how they both all sort of correlate. Different from yesterday, but actually, we've sort of rolled into this, and obviously the viewers here will get to see that in a couple of minutes. But if you're watching and you have some comments and you have some thoughts, please do put in some of your questions, comment, and if it's your first time coming across the channel, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell so you're alerted to each time we do go live. But the overarching thing, Mike, I think whenever I sort of think about what we're going to talk about today, we live our lives in our heads.
Ain't
And
that the truth?
right. And
Yeah.
you think about what you described, you think about what I've just discussed, and this was something that came from an impact theory YouTube video that I watched this morning, and I sent it through to you, and you
Right.
probably haven't had a chance to watch it just yet, but I've sort of captured
Yeah.
a summary of the various main points from this. And this was an interview done with Harvard psychologist Susan David on impact
Okay.
theory, and Tom Bilyeu. I don't know if you know how well you know Tom Bilyeu, Mike. I think he's brilliant. I think he's one of the best interviewers. I think he's one of the best things that we can learn from, you and I, and how to interview. And but this is a really engaging conversation. And Susan David basically says we live our lives in our heads, and she's sort of talking about how we shy away from fear, how we shy away and we desire to eliminate agitation and stress. But actually, she sort of commented, only dead people never feel stress, anger,
Yeah.
agitation, or fear, because all those
You're
emotions are
alive.
part of feeling alive.
Yep.
And we've
Yep.
talked, previously about the correlation between happiness and stress, and different people need that stress levels to actually elevate their happiness levels. And some of the other things that that sort of struck to me was, what did I do today that was worthwhile? Right. So at the end of every day, is that a question we should maybe ask ourselves, right? What did we do today that was worthwhile? Emotional agility, she talks about at length. It's such a great thing, and our minds can convince us that we are right, even if it destroys our relationships. So we can have our mindset secure that no, this is 100% correct. I don't care what anybody else says, but actually that might destroy our relationships, which is
Yeah.
kind of interesting. And one final thing I'll just note there, which is the last comment, was often in the specifics of our goals are what are in conflict. And what she's referring to in that, Mike, is, we may have goals that relate to our careers, our work, our family, and at times they're conflicted. And often that creates anxiety. So we want to do well in our goals, in our careers, but at times that may not it may interact with what we want to do with our families, and therefore there's a bit of a conflict, and then it's our
Right.
emotional side actually that really causes that. So it was a really really interesting video. I encourage people to go and watch it, and there is links in the description below to actually go and watch the video.
I must be alive and well this morning, Steve, because I have felt all those things that she just described as far as my emotions, anxiety, fear, frustration, anger. It's really interesting, and I saw just the first couple minutes of it, and boy, I'm excited to watch more. She's really well spoken, and
Hmm.
the interviewer, I'm not familiar with his work, but we gotta get some tips from him on how to do a video on YouTube, because he's got the cameras going, and her sound was great. Anyway, the technical side aside, the content of what she is saying is fascinating to me, because I'm very much interested in this emotional agility, as she calls it, and emotional intelligence, understanding why we do what we do, what motivates us, and how we can be better leaders, how we can be more empathetic. I think we'll talk about that here in a minute. But the
Hmm.
idea is we're all human beings, and we have this common experience, and we see things differently, have different perspectives. But we need to just remember that, especially during times of crisis, during a pandemic, and trying to manage our workplaces and helping our workforce, adapt to this new reality. It's all tied together. And if we could focus more on our commonalities, the thread set that I just heard the expression used yesterday during one of your presentations, the red thread that
Hmm.
ties things together, and I had to look that up to see what it was, what it meant in terms of business. But it does mean that common interest, that mission, that drive that all of us are trying to work towards. And yeah, I think, back to my opening statement of being able to remind myself that I can only control what I can control, and what positive thing did I do today, or what impact did I have on my little world today, is where I need to keep my brain, because the more I wander outside of that, and get outside the parameters of what I can impact and control, the less empowered I feel, the more helpless I feel, the more anxious I feel. So, I mean, is that what you took away from that? You watched the whole hour?
Yeah, I did, and unlike you, I like to watch things at 1.5 speed so I can get through it a little bit faster. I know you like to watch it at normal speed, so maybe I
I
cheated a
do.
little bit there, but I did get through it all. Yeah, and the other thing it reminded me of, Mike, was a Tony Robbins, and I remember watching a video, and I can't remember which series it was from his many of the books and many talks that he's given. But he says we control how we interpret other people's words, actions, and what our perceptions are in the world. So we choose how we actually internalize that, right? We can actually take that as a negative, or we can take it as a positive. That's our choice. And it sort of
Hmm.
just adds on to what Susan David was said in this interview. And I think it's something that sort of I try to remind myself all the time. Trust me, it's not easy. And, as we go through
No.
everything we're
Yeah.
going through right at this very moment in time, right? It is really easy for us to look at this and go, we're stuck at home. We can look at this in a really negative way. I don't see my colleagues. And there's many ways that we can interpret that information. And I think going back to that very first question is, what did we do today? What did we do today that actually made us feel good? What was worthwhile?
I
What
like
what
it.
did we do?
Yeah.
So
Excellent. And
Okay.
the idea of leadership, let's talk more about being a workplace leader, an empathetic leader, and helping others move along, because I think that's where, we
Yep.
can have an impact, especially with the platforms we have here, with Open Source Workplace, Workplace Innovator. That
Yep.
Forbes article, you just
Yep.
pop it up on the screen.
Yep.
Give me your real quick overview of what you took away, and then I'll share some of my thoughts on it.
Yeah, no, and obviously this is, as you mentioned, published in Forbes, written by Melody Wilding, and really, really interesting. And this was not a recent article, but this was actually published a while ago. But actually, in the context of everything that's been discussed today, I actually thought it was a really good reminder and a really good thing for us to do. And we've talked about this at length, how leadership will shift and how people need to become more empathetic. And obviously, this is, Melody's way of actually describing how we get to that. So being fully present, right? Master the art of active listening. Such an important trait. And she identifies through the article little nuances and things you have to be more conscious of to actually be that empathetic leader. Work on your own emotional literacy. So the words that you choose, the context by which you say, the tone by which you do things. Imagine the point of view of the other person, right? How are they going to feel as they receive these things, or hear your words, or see your body language, or the way you connect? A big thing at the moment, I don't know whether you've noticed, and I saw a video on this actually over the weekend, where people are actually waiting to see how certain people turn off their Zoom video at the end of a call. So are they
Really?
actually diving in to hit that button, or do they taking a moment to really enjoy the moment of being on that call and sort of thinking it through? And I never thought of it
Yeah.
in any way, shape, or form before, but it's really interesting actually. Whenever you pay attention to those things, you can see the people who are really eager to get off, and you can see the people who sort of linger and enjoy the conversation. Excuse me. But it's really interesting. So it's like being fully present whenever you're engaging in these video conversations, because people pay attention a little differently than perhaps what they do in normal times.
Uh-oh, I feel bad now because we had a marketing team meeting yesterday, and I was the first one to drop off. I was like, "Peace out, everybody," and then hit the
I mean,
exit
obviously,
button.
there are moments when you have to run to another meeting, and that's just what happens,
Yeah,
right?
right.
But again, it's just these emotional triggers, these emotional cues that I think we have to, and we are becoming much more aware of it, I think, in this environment
Yeah.
than we ever did in the office, because it's easiest to say hello, turn and walk away, sit at your desk and continue a conversation. Where in this environment, I think we have to be that little more intentional, and a little more empathetic. But I thought this was a great article. Again,
It
links
is,
below.
and it reminds me of kind of this shift in my mindset here in the new reality, I keep calling it, because ask me this the same question 2 months ago, 3 months ago, be like, who cares? It's a Zoom call. It doesn't matter. This is just a temporary situation. This is what we're doing as a patchwork to continue to somehow keep working while we're in this crisis mode. Well, I think now we've shifted from crisis mode, getting by, the scramble to work from home, getting set up, being somewhat functional, and all the questions that we've been asking in our live conversations and for these first few months was all about, how you doing? Are you able to be as functional? No, but I'm doing my best and blah, blah, blah. Well, I think there's got to be this shift where like this is now the reality, and we need to be more deliberate about adjusting, adapting, changing the rules, the Zoom etiquette, the engagement, the active listening. How do we demonstrate the things that we do on a routine basis, in person-to-person interactions? How do we do that more effectively in the current environment? And it's going to be a mixed bag, because as some of us return to offices, and some have, and some percentage of our colleagues go back into the workplace. Again, I'm thinking about months and even years to come here as we get into this new flexible environment. I hope that most organizations will allow, those that are more vulnerable to continue to work from home, and others will be coming in when they can. All those things, it's going to change. So therefore, we need to start being more deliberate, proactive, taking these tips in mind and saying, let's make the best of what this this new situation is, and not just be kind of on pause. I think that's where we've been, on pause, just doing what we can. I mean, I've been working like crazy, don't get me wrong, and you have too, and many of us have, but it's the mindset. It's like, yeah, I'm doing all this work and I'm functioning, but my real hope is to get back to the pre-pandemic situation where I could leave and travel and go to conferences and meet people and go out and do live interviews, face to face. Maybe some of that's going to come around the corner. And I have another thought on that. We could talk about, practicing what I preach, be comfortable being uncomfortable. And when offices do reopen and some of my prospective interviewees are available in their office, will I be brave enough to go out and meet them in person to do those interviews? That's a question I have for myself. And I feel like I should be, because the quality is so much better, all those things. But yeah, no, this is a great article, and I'm glad you shared it, because it put into kind of 8 simple steps all the things that I know I should be doing and I don't often do very well.
No, and I think it's, again, it's we all need reminders, right? And we need cues, right? Social cues, social reminders. And I don't know about you, Mike. I mean, on my computer, I have all these different cues all around my screen, just little reminders, just things to do all the time. And it's, we almost become sometimes agnostic that they're there. But actually, it's really important that we do get these little reminders, these little sayings that actually just elevate our energies, that just remind us how to behave. And maybe these are 8 things that, we can put around our screens, and actually just little reminders whenever we're communicating with our colleagues, with our managers, with our staff, whatever it is, with, friends, family, that actually we do use some of these cues.
But, good stuff.
Yeah.
It's good stuff.
So switching a little bit, I do want to, because there is something I want to finish on specifically.
Okay.
And this is the workplace design article that was shared. And it's 5 post-COVID behaviors and attitudes that will reshape the workplace. And this is really interesting. This was done obviously by Kristen and Laura there, who are part of Nelson Worldwide. And it talks about challenges. It talks about how to predict and how to shift the sort of mindset of all what the workplace is going to look like. And it's talking about, our behaviors. So you just take what you just said, Mike, about, the actual approaching somebody going in and interviewing them in the office, and how much better that is. But actually, you've got to go through a mind struggle of actually doing that. What is that like? You know what the outcome is. You know the improvement in the product. But there's an emotional attachment of actually getting to deliver that for you and also for whoever you're interviewing, right? And this is what this article is actually a lot about. It's about the mindset and how do we do these different things. And the one thing that's, I'm curious to know what sort of stuck with you, but it was the last one that actually stuck with me. People will no longer view flexibility as an amenity, but as a must-have in their jobs going forward. Yesterday, I listened to a CNBC interview with Jason Calacanis, who is an angel investor. And he was talking about in San Francisco and also in Silicon Valley how workplace is going to change and change indefinitely, because people don't want to live in San Francisco. Organizations such as Facebook, Twitter, and other social media and really tech companies are moving to that flexibility and giving people those options, where some have yet to make a decision on how they're going to behave in this new environment. And there is a fear that in the war for talent, the companies that provide the most flexibility will actually win in the talent war over those who actually won't provide the flexibility. So if your organization is saying you need to come into the office, employees are actually going to shift, similar to what's been said here. Employers who don't provide that ultimate flexibility, they will lose their staff, and those that actually provide the staff will actually win the war. You can choose to talk about this article or respond to some of that.
Well, I don't know. I'm not sure if I agree with that analysis, because we touched on it yesterday. This idea of be careful what we wish for. If we think that remote work is all there is, and that's the absolute, and again, flexibility to me is different than what that description is, because flexibility would allow for some days in the office, some days out of the office. If you move from Silicon Valley you're working for one of the tech firms there and you move 3 hours away or another state away, and they have a team meeting on Friday, how do you get there? What's the practical implication of that? Do you never come into the office? And that was something that always surprised me, and we didn't really process it too much here, but when Facebook and Twitter and some of the other big tech firms were saying permanent, work from home if that's what you want, I can't imagine that lasts, because the article we discussed yesterday, or a couple of them, reflected so much on the downside of remote work and some of the things that we're not maybe thinking about here if we're in crisis mode. So I'm hoping as we go forward, there'll be this more nuanced conversation. We won't make huge decisions around permanent change. I mean, I think it's just kind of foolish to announce this is the permanent new way we're going to do things because of COVID-19. Because yes, it's a long battle. We're in this for a period of time, years potentially. But to say that it's going to be forever this way, I know it's going to be forever changed, and that's the nature of our existence. Things are always changing. I certainly hope that we don't make, when it comes to this design article, yes, we have to make accommodations for space and for cleanliness and all those things. And some of these are good things that should become part of our permanent, routine if they haven't already. But if we were to throw out all the different, ideas that have been developed just with so much thought and so much research and so much attention towards what makes people productive and happy and gives them choice and control in the workplace, and says this is the new normal and it's going to be this way forever. And then, we certainly hope that COVID's going to, while it may be with us forever like the flu, it may return and so forth, but post-vaccine and once it, we reach some level of herd immunity, it won't be as this daunting, scary thing, and we'll eventually get back to, just living our lives and being part of workplaces and public settings. And if we had thrown out a lot of these great ideas that we've worked so hard for over the last decade or two, I think that's a mistake. So giving people the choice and flexibility is good, but I don't know, when it comes to the other side effects, the unintended consequences of saying, I'm going to work remotely, I'm going to move to, the cheapest part of the country, and I expect my employer to continue to employ me, even though I never come into my office and I'm just a remote worker. I can't see that working out, especially in the near term. What do you think, Steve? I mean, the war for talent, all those things we talked about amenities and employers needing to attract top talent, has that shifted at all as far as with the economy being on the way down? And we're going to be in this a long period of economic difficulty before we recover back to the full employment levels we had pre-COVID. I mean, do you really think employees are going to have the 100% say in what they want, like that last line of the article said, or do you think it's going to be more of a, this is what the marketplace dictates, and if you don't want to work here and have, be a part of this team, then there's someone else waiting that would like this job. I don't know. There's a lot of thoughts.
No, it's a lot of thoughts, and they're great thoughts. And the great thing is we don't know the answer, and the answer won't be the same for any two companies. It won't be the same for any two locations within companies. There's so many unknowns, but I look at it, I try to, as I sort of take what you said, I'm trying to look at it from two perspectives, right? And there's the employee perspective. There's the employee that wants that flexibility. There's the employee that really likes the idea of not having to commute for 110 minutes every day to go to the office, be it once a week, be it 5 times a week, or be it anything in between. I think if we look at productivity and what people are actually doing, I think people are taking some of that time that they spend traveling and actually are doing some work during that time these days, right? So we're working out a little bit longer, starting a little bit earlier, finishing a little bit later. We feel okay, and we actually feel okay energy wise because we're not having to do that long commute. And I think everyone wins in that scenario. There's a fair trade-off, right? I also think, though, from the perspective of an employer, there's two things at play here, right? There is the existing employees who are performing well that the employer wants to retain. What do they want to do? will employer be prepared to make compromises should that employee want to go and live somewhere else? And I think if we look at historically within many organizations, good, high performing employees who want to relocate, companies typically support that. They may have tenure, they may be shown to be really good people who are self driven and who are high performers. Employers are happy for those folks to relocate and continue working. There is going to be also the access to talent that they currently don't have access to by hiring remote employees. So for example, if you're a New York City based company, your pool of talent is call it 110 minutes. It's something that can be greater than that, but that's what your pool is. Where actually, if you go to a remote workforce, your actually ability to recruit is the entire world. So that provides you with more opportunities and greater opportunities to recruit better skilled, higher skilled people, and perhaps you can do it at a lower cost. So there's going to be all these different things at play. But the point that you made is we don't know. And that's one thing for sure. We don't know. We don't know what this will play out. I don't know how many people will go back to the office. I think the office has changed. I think the office will change forever. And I mean dramatically change. And I think some of the things that we're putting out there are downplaying actually how much that workplace is going to change. I think there is a seismic shift in how people are going to work in the future. But that's just that's my 2 bits worth, and who knows this? I promise you, I'm wrong. I promise you.
Well, I don't necessarily disagree with you that things are going to change dramatically. I guess I want to rewatch our conversation from yesterday and maybe reread that article about remote work, because some of the things you mentioned there that are positives potentially for employers, the driving down of costs, the commoditization of the employee and the skill set. You know, you can have an employee based in some other part of the world where the cost of living is much less expensive, doing the same productive job that someone here in the U.S. would cost twice as much to do. That whole idea of outsourcing is a scary one. And I think that's what this article reminded me of, is that there's more to it than just some of those practical aspects, because there's something about an organization, something about a culture, something about companies that make them successful beyond just the output of their employees and the cost to do business. There's they're the successful companies that have what Simon Sinek says. They know their why, they know their mission, and people are, bought into that mission, and they're part of a team, and they're moving in the same direction. It's a living, breathing organization. That's why it comes from the same term as organism, I think. It's a living, breathing entity that does something good for the world and puts out a product or a service or a expertise. I don't know. I think there's so many other factors, and like you say, we don't know what they all are and how this COVID-19 situation is going to affect it all in the long term. But we'll see. We'll keep talking about it and find ways to hopefully guide our listeners into some good decisions, good leadership roles. And that's what I really want to help do is help people be the best leaders they can be, and empathetic leaders. And that's what we talked about today. So thanks for that. That was great stuff.
We did. And I just want to finish on one thing, because, when we started, we live our lives in our heads, and we have the ability to take in what people say, right? We choose to interpret that information. And I want to finish with this one thing. And this was from Tracy Hawkins, who posted this on LinkedIn. And this was something that was, I thought, fantastic, right? And this is like a superb example of somebody who was told you can't and you shouldn't and naysayer. But Tracy actually decided no. She decided how she would interpret that information and turned it into a positive, and has recently just become Vice President of Real Estate and Workplace and Remote Experience at Twitter, which is fantastic.
Interesting title. Yeah,
exactly. And those are the 2 things that I sort of wanted to touch on with you, and we're running out of time, but I really wanted to get into this remote experience. But the first thing is obviously the mindset, and I love the ability, and also the fact that she was prepared to post this and share her experience is fantastic. And maybe tomorrow we talk about that remote experience title, because I think we're all going to try and figure out who owns that remote experience and who actually, what will that role be in the future.
Exactly. And it's so funny. You shared that with me. I guess it was late last night that you wanted to talk about Tracy's post. And I know Tracy, we've met at industry events, and I've talked about having her on my podcast. It hasn't happened yet, but we will get there. I certainly hope at some point. But when I saw that post on my LinkedIn feed and I clicked like, she had like 200 and some likes to it. And then you shared it, and I went back and followed the link to the post. It had over 600 likes. I'm not even sure where it is today, and so many comments. But she certainly struck a chord with our network of workplace leaders, and it's something that I think we all can relate to. And that was the first thing that jumped out to me. It was her title change, and certainly interesting that someone in the real estate with a real estate or facilities background now adds this new responsibility of remote experience. It really opened a lot of questions in my mind that I'm going to ask her if I ever get the chance to interview her for my show, and certainly ask some of my other colleagues and friends from this community as far as this is an opportunity, because this new piece of the puzzle will be a permanent piece. I think that's the piece we can both agree on, is that remote work has always been there for some very small percentage of us, but it's going to be a bigger piece of what we do as workplace leaders. So
certainly will.
It's interesting, and we'll learn from Tracy's experience.
We certainly will. We certainly will. Mike, thank you as always. Great chatting with you. I hope you're feeling a little bit better than you did earlier. And
always. Thank you, Steve.
And good luck with today's live stream.
Thank you, sir. Have a great one.